Morning guys, hi, welcome back to the Knitting Expat Podcast channel. My name is Mina, I'll be your host today. Welcome back if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much, and if you're a new viewer, thank you for checking me out. I hope you enjoy what you see. I am back today with episode number 132 of the podcast, and yeah, today is Wednesday the 6th of February, so welcome to my little corner of the internet. We will be talking about some finished objects, some works in progress, some spinning stuff. I have a giveaway to announce the winners for, and some general chit chat. I actually don't have any acquisitions this week, I don't think. So yeah, fingers crossed this won't be a super long one, and let's just dive right in. I have my notes on my phone, so if I look down, that's what I'm checking. Yes, I just remembered something I've completely forgotten to grab, so I want to go grab it. So first up, I just wanted to go over some recently published designs or coming up designs. Now the first one is from the Seasons Sock Club. So this pair is the Spring Showers socks. This is actually published on the 1st of February. It's only available to club members until the end of the club. I think it's until June 2019, so June this year. Details are on the club and the pattern pages. So the pattern page is up, but you just can't purchase it yet as an individual pattern. You can still purchase it as part of the club if you want to take part, and then you get all the patterns that have been released to date with that. And so these are the Spring Shower socks, just a lovely cabled sock down the front and ribbing down the back of the leg. The ribbing helps keep the sock nice and stretchy, because when you add cables it can make it a little bit tighter. And got my garter heel in there, which I absolutely love, and some twisted stitches in the top for the ribbing, and yeah, and just my regular toe. I really love how these socks have turned out. When you look at them flat like this, they don't look as they don't show off the pattern as well as when you look at it straight on down the front, because it's really intended to be looked at like this. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm enjoying seeing your versions popping up already online, and I can't wait to see your finished socks. So the yarn I used for this was by Leading Men Fibre Arts, and their Showstopper base in the Smoky Quartz colourway, which I picked up at Rhinebeck, at the Indian Tangle show before Rhinebeck rather. So that's those. Really excited to have those out. The other design that I have that's not, well, it's currently already released, it's already out there, is the Little Nugget Sweater. And I published that around the time that my daughter was born, or just before she was born, back in like early 2017. Well, she was born in February 2017, so it'll be either like end of January, early February when I published it, I think. And yeah, but ever since having had her and understanding a bit more about how babies grow and how big they get and how quickly and all of that sort of stuff, I wasn't overly happy with leaving the pattern the way it was. I wanted to change it. I'd wanted to expand the sizing, and I wanted to change a couple of things about it. I've become a lot more confident as a designer over the years, so I wanted to update it basically. So that's what I did. I've updated it. The pattern's all ready to go. I just need to sit down and update it on Ravelry. So anyone who has already purchased the pattern at the current price and the current format will get this update. I'm just updating the design. I'm not republishing as a separate pattern. We'll get this update, and then once it's updated, I'm going to be increasing the price to be the same as the rest of my garment pricing structure. So if you do buy it now before I've updated it, then you will get it at a slightly cheaper price. So I'm not sure when I'll probably, to be honest, like if you see the podcast as soon as it comes out, or within the first like 12 to 24 hours, you'll probably still be able to get it at the cheaper price. But I'm planning on updating it tomorrow, probably, or Thursday, by the end of the week at the latest. So if you did want to get it at the discounted price, I would jump on it now. All right, so moving along to our finished objects. So just on a side note, do you remember when I got this little box and I was like, oh, it'd be great, I could put all my stuff in it for the podcast, and it barely fits. It barely fits everything in it. But yeah, I do love this box, and I kind of like just have it on the side where over week or two between episodes, I just accumulate stuff in there. But right, let's move on, like I said, to finished objects. There's a couple of whips in there that I take out. But yeah, so I don't have them in any particular like chronological order or anything, but first up, Layla Socks. These are adorable little baby socks, or toddler socks rather, for Layla, with little garter heels in them. It's really cute. And yeah, so just plain vanilla. I used Bad Wolf Girl Studios. It was just a random like test skein. She had a little 50-gram skein that she gifted me, and yeah, so that's those, and these will just go as part of her birthday present, I think. I've switched now. I had been knitting Layla tube socks up until recently, and I've recently switched to putting heels in her socks, mainly because when she wears them around the house, the tube socks like slide off her feet, because we don't have carpets upstairs, we have wooden floors, so it's also a little bit more slippery that way, and they keep coming off, and she gets frustrated because they keep coming off her feet. So I started putting heels in her socks in the hopes that they will stay on her feet better. Yes, it'll probably mean that she'll outgrow them and I'll have to knit her more socks more frequently, but quite frankly I'm not that worried about that. I knit socks pretty quickly these days, so not too much of an issue. And that was really fun. All my socks, unless I say otherwise, are knit on 2.25mm needles, and I've either used high sharps or Chiagis. I try and say that at the beginning, because otherwise repeating that for every pair of socks that I show you is going to get a bit tedious. Then we have, I'll just do all the socks at once, to be honest. I started these as some cinnamon knitting socks, and did I actually end up knitting these at the, I can't remember what we went to see, but yeah, I think I did knit at least the leg at the cinema. And then so this is just a vanilla sock with a garter heel and mini heel flap adjustment. So all my socks have a mini heel flap adjustment and garter heel. And this is by, the yarn is by Into the Whirled, and it's their Spinners End Colourway. It was a it was in their sale section at Rhinebeck that I got from there. Then this is what I knit on the way to New York. I cast it on in the morning on the way there, and I think I'd finish them the next day. So this is Dragonfly Fibres, the City That Never Sleeps. It was their VKL special colourway. I think for the very first VKL I attended in 2016. I can't be sure. But I absolutely love it. This is on their Dragoni sock base, which was a high twist superwash merino, no nylon. It's a really dense yarn, very high twist, and I'm not too concerned. Again, mini heel flap and German short row heel in garter. And yeah, these were just really nice to knit on whilst away. And I used the London Bee Ridge sock pattern. I'm not sure if you can see that, the little garter welts on there. It just helps to break up. You can see what it looks like as stockinette down here versus with the pattern up on the top of it. It was just really fun, and the pattern actually really helped with me keeping count of how many rows I'd been knitting, which was great, especially while traveling. So those were really fun. And then I cast on these socks to knit on the way back from Vogue, which and I only finished these recently because once I got back I kind of put these away for a while, and I was working on other projects. But yeah, so these socks are done. I haven't blocked these yet, but this is out of Lion Brand Sockies in the Toffee colourway. I picked this up at Michael's when I was in the US. I would have gotten more of this yarn because, as I mentioned in the last podcast, I refuse to knit socks for my dad now out of merino based sock yarns, only because his feet are like sandpaper, and he's blown through 3 pairs of socks in the last year. One of them I didn't even last the whole year. I think it only lasted about 6 months. So and when I say I blew through them, this wasn't even a kind of hole that could be easily repaired. We're talking about holes that are like 2 or 3 right next to each other, and like the gap between the holes are like literally strands of thread being held together. It just wasn't going to work. So repairing that would have been too much. Anyway, so I'm trying some hardier and sturdier sock yarns for him, but I would have gotten more of this yarn if they'd had it in other colours. This was the only colour they had that I thought my dad would like. The other ones were a little bit too pale, a bit too pastel, just not really what I think he would wear. and that's all the socks. And then oh, I finished this before I left for Rhinebeck. Vogue Knitting Life. That was what happened a couple of weeks ago. Just making sure I don't miss anything. Okay. I knit another little nugget sweater for Layla, and this is out of my handspun, which is really exciting. It's my first official handspun sweater, although not for me, for my baby, for my little girl. And yeah, I did use a commercial yarn. I had some, it was a 50-gram skein of some yarn by Woo Sheeps, part of a gradient set, but which I've now decided I'm just going to split up and use for contrasts here and there, or for little socks. Yeah, so I've used that for the ribbing at the collar, at the cuffs, and at the hem, mainly because these are the areas that get the most sort of wear and tear on a sweater with a toddler. Like you're pulling this over the necks, the cuffs get dirty when they're eating or doing whatever, and again with the hem it tends to get a little bit dirty sometimes, although the bits that kind of get the most stress, I feel. So I thought having those in a commercial yarn might be safer, and this yarn just knit up so beautifully. I absolutely love how this worked up. It was so much fun to work with, seeing the colour changes and the striping. I really think this sweater would be great for handspun, clearly. I knit it out of handspun. And my handspun wasn't particularly even. You can totally see there are bits that are lumpy bumpy. It's not complete. It was totally underspun. Honestly, for the most part, it felt, and it still feels like it was knit out of a single plied yarn, not a plied yarn, because it's so soft and it was so underplied. It might as well have been a single ply. I know I could have run it back through the wheel and put more twist in it and all of that, but I liked how it felt, and it's still yarn. It's held up, and it might fall apart quicker than anything else that I knit, but I enjoyed the process of making it, and I'm sure Layla will enjoy wearing it, and when it does fall apart, that's fine too. At least we've had some enjoyment out of it. So yeah, this is going to be part of her Christmas, her birthday present with those socks. Her handmade birthday present. Anyway, her birthday's in a couple of weeks, so trying not to think about it too much. Can't believe she's going to be 2. Just blows my mind. Oh, I should mention I am wearing the Waffle Pullover, which is one of my more recently published, or actually my most recently published adult garment. Earlier this year I designed this for the Primrose Yarn Company booth at Vogue Knitting Live, which was really exciting. And again, if you saw my Vogue vlog video, then you'll have seen this on display in the booth, which was really fun. Another thing I was knitting on at Vogue, or during my trip, was this shawl. And again, it's out of my handspun, and the fibre I used to spin this was by Hilltop Cloud, and it was in their Colours of Cambria fibre set. So it's like 5 20-gram balls, 5 20-gram bits of roving in these 5 different colours, and I got 2 sets of it, and it was a Christmas present from either my parents or my brother. They kind of pulled together and got all the gifts together for us. And so I spun them up and then plied them together, so it's a 2-ply, keeping the colours separated. And my plan was to write up this design, and I will still do a handspun shawl design, but I just don't think this is gonna be the one that I write up right now. I like it, I like how it's worked up, but this transition section, every time I did it, I had to do something different. So 4 times that I did this, I could never get it to work the same way, and I just don't want to have to write out multiple different versions of how to do this transition section depending on what your stitch count is. It just makes the pattern too long, too cumbersome, and it will feel complicated even though it's not. So I'm going to have a little rethink on how this section could be worked differently, or a little bit more simply, and come back to this in the future. I really enjoy how it's turned out, and one of the things I really liked about it was it is a kind of way as you go kind of method. Use up as much or as little of the yarn as you want kind of philosophy. I had about 500 and something meters or yards, 566 yards I think total of yarn to work with, and this is the size shawl I got. It's pretty decent. It's not quite my wingspan. Oh no, wait, it's just my wingspan width wise. It's from one fingertip to the other fingertip, just about. So this is about the minimum sort of size I would want for a shawl for me, for my size and height and body and stuff. So you can wear it, I can wear it like I do a normal shawl. It does feel like the ends are a little bit short just because I did the shaping differently. So it's quite a deep one. It goes quite far down. But what I decided to do, and I feel like this works really well for hand spun shawls, and you could do this with any shawl, especially ones that have eyelets in them, is just add some buttons. So I put some buttons, I wore it after it was finished and blocked, and then I used some removable stitch markers to mark where I wanted to put the buttons on either side. So what I can do now, I can get it the right way around, there we go. What I can do now is once I put it on, I've zhuzhed it about and made it how I want it to be. I can pop these little buttons through the eyelets and get hold of that button, there we go. And then now there's no way that this shawl is going to fall off my neck because it's buttoned down, and so it's essentially been converted into a cowl. And then yeah, and so then you can wear it like that, and then you don't have to worry about it coming off. And this works really well for hand spun shawls, especially if your shawls turned out slightly smaller than you expected. Obviously if it's turned out big, you might not need to do this, but as you can see like the tips of this shawl finish around here, which is probably fine, and I could probably just tie a little knot, like a loose knot, to keep them together under here, but there's still that chance that it could slip off over the course of a day, and especially with a little one and I'm running around after a toddler if we're out and about. Sometimes those tails can get in the way, or like the risk of falling off and stuff. So I just found popping a couple of little buttons through these eyelets, and obviously you could pick something a little bit less obvious that doesn't stick out as much, but I don't think this sticks out too badly. And your cowl's not going anywhere, or your shawl rather, which is now a cowl, is not going anywhere. So yeah, I feel like that's quite a fun little idea. And yeah, that way if you had slightly less yardage and your shawl was going to finish, say, here instead, then you could still wear this and it wouldn't like affect the wearability of the garment at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm really excited with how this turned out. Like I said, I will be knitting up another version of this at some point when I get enough yarn spun up, enough fibre spun up to make another version. And again, this was I guess overall it was very much a sport to fingering weight type thickness of yarn, and I used 4mm needles. So again, it's completely adaptable. You could use thicker yarn or thinner yarn and just adjust your needle size to get a fabric that you like. So yeah, I'm really excited with how this one turned out. Like I said, I will revisit the design again in the future. It's just at the moment I feel like it would be far too complicated with the way this transition works to write it up right now and to make it be easy to follow. And in case anyone's wondering, this is all I had left of the scrap, leftover bits. I had none of the orange left, like the rust was completely gone. I probably actually could have gotten at least one more garter row repeat out of the red, the last colour, but I was a bit worried because I was doing an I-cord bind off and I was worried that I wouldn't have enough, so I have a little bit more of that left over. But overall I think there's like 5 grams left over here, 5 maybe 6 grams total, so I used up almost all of it, which is great. And like I said, so that was from Hilltop Cloud, and she's a UK based dyer out of Wales. My last finished object, which I'm really excited to share with you guys, is a collaboration with John Arbon Textiles. They put a call out a while ago asking for designers who would want to work with their yarns, specifically their new yarn Explore Sock, which has just been released a couple of weeks ago. And so I contacted them saying that I would love to work with their yarn, but the deadline that they were looking for was a little bit tight for me with Christmas and everything else going on, and Vogue and everything coming up. I knew I wouldn't be able to hit their deadline. And they were like, okay, great, well, we'd love to work with you, but maybe not with the Explore Sock because of the deadline issue, but with anything else that they currently have. So I was like, great. I ended up settling what it was first, they asked me to send in a photo of like a swatch of an idea and like a concept that I wanted to work on, like an idea for what I wanted to do. And this is actually the first time I think that I've ever had to put together like a proposal almost. Like it wasn't a formal proposal at all, but it was a proposal nonetheless. It was just a photo and a couple of lines about what I wanted to make. So the swatch that I sent in is kind of funny showing this to you guys now, but this was the swatch that I did. Whipped it up really quickly, the idea that I had, and took a photo of it, sent it to them, and I was like, really like the idea of doing this like faux brioche. It's like a fisherman's rib, 2-color fisherman's rib. It looks and works just like brioche, with like some cabling, and I'm thinking either a hat or cowl, something along those lines is what I was going for. I was like, it could also work for socks, because if they wanted me to do it for their sock yarn at the time. And they came back saying, great, like I love the idea of a cowl, and we settled on using their Knit by Numbers DK. And so I used the Knit by Numbers DK, which is 100% non-superwash merino, in the number 11, which is this colour, this like beigey grey, and number 75, which is this sort of like maroonish red burgundy colour. And the reason I chose these 2 colours was I wanted the cowl to be fairly unisex, and to appeal to all genders and types. And so after a little bit of swatching with the yarn and ripping out and trying again and figuring out what I wanted it to be, this is what we ended up with. I'm so excited by this. They actually sent me 4 skeins total, 2 of each colour, because I wasn't sure how it was going to work out yet and how much yarn I would need. But this took up just under 2 skeins. And I was very conscious because the John Alban Textiles skeins are a little bit bigger than the average DK skein. So they're 250 meters or 277 yards per 100 grams. And I know the average DK skein is around 230 to 250 yards in the US, just from previously working with them. So yeah, so I try to keep within that sort of bracket, and also give myself a little bit of leeway in terms of like gauge and stuff. So there's still about 10 grams left of each colour. So yeah, really excited with how this has turned out. I'll show you what it looks like on. So I've been asked actually by a lot of people in the past about whether or not I would design a cowl like this, in terms of that it's wider at the bottom and narrower at the top kind of thing. And it's always been on my mind as something I wanted to do, and I don't know why, I just never got around to doing it. And now that I have, I absolutely love it. I feel like it's great. You can wear it, I have quite wide shoulders, so it doesn't necessarily go over my shoulders particularly well. It does a little bit. You can sit over your shoulders a little bit depending on how wide your shoulders are, but I'm more likely to wear it like this. And then the front sticks up over you can cover your face a little bit if you want, and it will tuck in quite nicely with a coat over it. It covers your chest, it covers your face. It's quite dense because it's 2 layers, it's double thick. Like I said, it works up exactly like, it looks exactly like brioche, but you're never having to do a brioche stitch. It's a fisherman's rib essentially, if you know what that is. And yes, these are cables. It is completely cabled, like proper cables. It's not twisted stitches, these are proper cables. And the cables can be worked without a cable needle. I will be doing a tutorial for how to work these cables, because it can be a little bit tricky when you're working in the cable in stitch pattern. But it's not complicated, it's just a little bit tricky if you're not sure where to stick your needles to work the stitches. So I will be doing a tutorial for that, just to give people a visual and so they can see what they're doing. But yeah, so you start at the bottom, you cast on the bottom and you work your way up and you bind off at the top. And I'm just so excited about this. It's lovely, it's not too heavy. Like I said, it's less than 200 grams. It's dense, so it's going to keep you really warm when it's windy outside, and I can't wait to wear this. I've got to get some photos taken of it. Hopefully I'll get my brother or Perry to model it as well, so I can get photos of a guy wearing it as well as me or someone else. If I can convince someone else to model for me, that'd be amazing, because I hate modeling my own. I model my own designs mainly because I have no one else to do it for me. But yeah, anyway, we will see. I'm really excited about this. I hope you guys are as well. I would love to get this published in time before Edinburgh, but we will see if that happens or not. My tech editor is about to have a baby if she hasn't already had her baby, so we will see how this goes. I may have to temporarily find another tech editor while she's taking some time off, which is completely understandable. She should. So we will see how that goes. Yeah, I think that's all I had to say about this. I used 3.5mm needles for the whole thing. I think for the actual pattern I might take it up to 3.75, just so it's not quite so dense, but I'll put the option in the pattern for you to choose which size you want to use for yourself. Alright, so that's that one, and that's all my finished objects. I feel like that's been a lot of chat just on some knitting, but I guess that's what you're here for, isn't it? And would you believe it, I have 5 works in progress to show you. Actually no, I only have 4 to show you, but I have 5 on the needles. How crazy is that? The girl who never has more than 3 things on her needles at once has 5. I know, bonkers. Literally, I came back from Vogue and I was so inspired to get going. Honestly, I've found it hard, like, not to cast on everything. I'm having to like restrain myself, especially because a lot of them are designs, so I'm having to keep detailed notes as I go on a lot of these designs. So I'm trying to balance that with having some things going that don't need as much thinking. So yeah. And also trying to keep on top of things that I have deadlines for as well. So some, actually mostly self-imposed, but deadlines nonetheless. All right, so the first work in progress I have, and this is a long-term project, is I am knitting Layla, my little girl, her own little pinwheel scrap blanket. I knit a pinwheel scrap blanket a couple of years ago when I first published the design, and I gifted that to my mum for her 60th birthday. So that was her 60th birthday present, and she loves it. They use it all the time. It's always on their sofa, and whenever someone's having a nap at their house now, that blanket gets used. And I decided I wanted to make one for Layla, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one that's kind of, I guess, crib size at the moment, the size that will like cover her crib quite well. And then what I'll do is, as she gets older, I will possibly add more to it, or maybe what I'll do is just knit a huge one now. We will just see how I feel. But the beauty of this blanket is you can keep adding to it if you want to, assuming you don't put like a finished edge on it. But I've done 2 blocks so far, which is really fun. And what I've done differently from the pattern, so the pattern is actually written for fingering weight, but what I'm doing is I'm holding a fingering weight double, or I'm using worsted and DK weight yarns, and I'm using bigger needles. So I'm using 4mm needles. I believe the pattern calls for 3, so I'm using 4mm, which is the US 6, and I am casting on 20 stitches instead of what the pattern calls for. So the squares are slightly smaller overall, but not by much because I'm using thicker yarn and bigger needles. It definitely gives a nice sort of like dense fabric, but also drapey, so it's not super stiff. So this one's actually all fingering weight held double, which is really fun. These 2 here were actually things I knit for Layla. So this was part of her little red pullover, and this was the handspun from her Handspun Little Nugget pullover that I just showed you held double. This was from the Spring Shower socks. I knit socks out of this. This is Woolenvine in the Mooncusser colourway. I did the Snuggery socks out of this from last year's club, or one of last year's club, and this was another pair of vanilla socks, and so were these. And this was vanilla socks, but for me, handspun by my friend Sarah before I started spinning. But her handspun is so beautiful and very even, and yeah, amazing. She gets like a fingering weight 3-ply, which is amazing to me. But yeah, so that's that first block, and the second block is almost entirely the yarns that I use to knit Layla things. So these 2 are Malabrigo Rios, which I used to knit her a Gramps cardigan by Tinker Knits. These 2 are La Bien-Aimée DK Merino in Yellow Brick Road, Graffiti and Patagonia, which I knit her a stripy mix and match cardigan, cardigan pullover, which was her part of her Christmas present. And then this one is Primrose Yarn Company in Nasty Unicorn, which I knit her Double Dutch cardigan out of. and this one is Lavender Loon yarn in the Throat Punch, I want to say, or Punch Throat, I always get it wrong, I think it's Throat Punch colourway, which I knit her garden gnome hoodie out of, and her little hat that she wears a lot at the moment, the star hat. And these two are not things that I knit Layla for, but they're just the other sort of DK weights that I had to put in the square. So this is Junk Yarn DK in the Sophia colourway, and this is Nora George DK in the Mrs. Fig of Wisteria Way colourway. So that's those. I wasn't planning on sitting here and naming each colourway and everything, but I guess that's what we did. I won't do that every time, I promise. I know it'll get a bit boring. But those are the 2 squares I've done so far. And I've actually found, because of the changes I've made to the pattern, each of these little triangles takes me 10 minutes. So that means the whole square takes me less than an hour and a half to do. Like from start to finish, like just knitting time, which is great. It means it's a very quick project to do like one block. And it's great for like in the car, on the go. If Layla's playing on her own, I could just quickly whip up one square while she's playing. One square, one triangle quickly while she's playing and stuff, so that's great. So what happens is you cast on, so I guess in this case I started with this one, you cast on and you work this triangle with short rows, and then you switch colour, and then you work this triangle finishing the short rows, and then you start again and you knit this triangle, do your short rows, and then you do the short rows in the next triangle, finishing the short rows from the previous triangle, and you just work your way around, changing colours at the end of each triangle. And then when you get to the end, you kind of just, I do a modified 3 needle bind off with your live stitches, and then you cast on stitches, which I have a video for that as well on YouTube, which is also linked in the pattern. So yeah, so then you get these nice little neat blocks that are joined as you go all the way around. It's just one little seam, which isn't really a seam. I mean, it looks like a seam on the back, but it's a modified 3 needle bind off, so you're not having to use a tapestry needle. And the only thing you have to seam are the blocks when you put them together, and even then you can do that with a crochet hook. I have a video for that too. I did a couple of tutorials for this blanket when it was published to help you guys with those aspects of it. But yeah, so really enjoying that so far. My next 2 works in progress are part of the same thing, but they're 2 separate projects. I'll show you the first one. So this is yarn by my lovely friend Sam, Lavender Loon Yarn Company. This is a new base for her. It's her BFL non-superwash yarn DK, and this one is the Cognac colourway, which is beautiful, like sort of mustard yellow, golden colour, which I absolutely love. My inspiration for her, that what I told her I wanted colour-wise, was like jewel tones. And the ones I told her was like an amethyst purple, emerald green, and like an amber yellow. And so this was the yellow that she came up with, which was beautiful. And I actually hand wound this ball using my Nostopin. I'm trying to get better at using the Nostopin. I just find it's really slow. I prefer winding on a ball winder just because it's quicker. Although it does look pretty when you use the Nostopin. So I've just started this one. So this is a part of a trio of hats that I'm designing, but it's going to be one pattern, just with 3 different cable options for the body of the hat, the main part of the hat. So they all start the same. Depending on what size you're knitting, you're casting on the same for all 3. Your ribbing is exactly the same. Your setup row is the same, and then it's just when you get to the cable section, you have 3 different options of what you want to follow. So I've done the folded brim option, which is another option you can choose. I try to give you guys as many options as possible, and yeah, it uses 4mm needles for the brim and 5mm needles for the body. So that's where I'm at with this one. And the second one I cast on was in the Fern colourway, which was the beautiful like emerald green colour. And this one I am a little bit off, about 10 rows off from the folded brim. It looks so tiny, they do look really tiny, but it's just because the ribbing is done on quite small needles, and it's a 2x2 rib, so it cinches in quite a lot and it does stretch a lot as well. It does fit my head, trust me. I know it looks really tiny, but it does fit. Here's hoping. Otherwise it's Layla size, and I will just rework the maths in the pattern. But yeah, so this one is almost there for the folded brim, and then this will be the second design. And because I only have 2 sets of 16-inch circulars for my interchangeable set, I can only do 2 at a time. So one's on the 4mm needles until it needs to switch, and then I need to finish this hat, so then I can put the 5mm on those ones. So that's that. So again, I'm hoping to have these ready to go hopefully by the end of March, maybe early April, but we shall see. I'm maybe getting in, the pattern for that one's actually already written up, so I think once the first hat is finished and I'm a little bit more confident with how the sizing is going, I will probably reach out to testers and get the pattern out to testers whilst I'm still finishing up the samples and getting the photos taken and stuff. That way it'll be ready to publish a little bit sooner. Then my next work in progress I have to show you, and this is actually the last one I'm showing you, because the 5th one is a design for the Mini Skein Pattern Club, which I'm using the mini bundle, like the 30 Mini Skein bundle that Primrose Yarn Company gave me at Rhinebeck to design with, and I finally decided what I'm doing with it. I had an idea, I knew what it was going to be, and I knew I knew what it was going to, the shape of the item was going to be like, and what sort of design features it was going to have. It was more about how I was going to combine the colours together to work, and I went through 2 or 3 different ideas of how that was going to look before I finally settled on something. So I finally settled on something. I wound up the first few skeins, mini skeins, and I cast on last night. So I'm really excited to see how that's going. I mean, it's progressing quite well and it's looking how I want it to look, which is good. And next up, this is in my pink Hazel project bag. I've been wanting to cast on with this yarn for a very long time. I bought this yarn, when was it? Like October 2016, on a trip to the US. We went to, Perry and I went to Alexandria, and this is where I picked up this yarn, which is super special, and I'll explain some of the reasonings why in a bit. But what I'm knitting out of it is the adult version of the Little Nugget Pullover. So try and get this in some semblance of an order so I can show you. So yeah, I'm using this little like rainbow combination. I know it's missing one colour, but I couldn't find a good indigo, but there we go, that's what I'm going with, and I think 6 is enough, to be quite honest. And yeah, so actually that trip was quite an emotional trip for me. I haven't talked about it a huge lot but on the podcast and stuff, but I have mentioned it in the past. I don't have any issues talking about it, but I know it can be a subject that's quite triggering for some people, and I don't want to like upset anyone by mentioning it, but I also do agree that this is something that does need to be talked about and isn't talked about enough. And I've talked about it a lot with lots of different people over the last few years. But before we had Layla, I did have a miscarriage. It was quite early on, but it was very emotional and very upsetting at the time, as you would expect. And this trip to the US happened about 2 weeks after. 2 weeks after, so I was like still quite hormonal, still very upset, still very not in a great place emotionally, to be quite honest. So this yarn, when I bought it, was very much like it was going to be happy yarn and remind me of a really like positive trip, and yeah, so I've been wanting to knit something special out of it, so I couldn't think of anything better than this garment. So finally wound it all up recently and cast on yesterday. So starting from red, I'm going to go in colour order according to the rainbow. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple is the way I'm going. And so started off with red at the top. And yeah, so this is going to be a really happy project. And I've done, actually the maths and everything for this design again has already been sorted out. I did it all ahead of time, so there shouldn't be too much. This is one of those ones that I can just cast on and go because I've done the work already for it. So here we are at the neckline. So you start off, it's worked the same as the Little Nugget in terms of the setup. So you start with the ribbing and you work some short rows to get the back to be higher than the front. And so I'm hoping you'll be able to see this if I show it to you. I purposely didn't knit too far on this so you could see it better. So you can see that's the back and the front is lower down. It's not by a lot. I think it's about 10 rows difference between the front and the back overall, like at the deepest part versus the lowest part of the front. But it will be enough of a difference that when you're wearing it, the back is higher than the front, which should make it a more comfortable fit. So yeah, I'm just on the raglan increases now, and this is going to be just a really simple plain top down raglan. I'm striping it obviously using these colours, but similar in style to the Little Nugget, just the adult version. It's going to be super adaptable and you can make it what you want to. You can add a stitch pattern if you wanted. Yeah, it's going to be fairly flexible in that regard. It's a nice sort of canvas. You could use handspun with it. You could throw in some texture patterns. You could do all sorts with it. But I just wanted a simple top-down raglan in fingering weight in my sort of like arsenal of patterns, as it were. And like I said, it's something that's been on my mind for a while. So I'm finally excited to be getting to that. And I'm using 3.75mm needles for the body, and I believe I used 3.25 for the ribbing for that. Okay, moving on to spinning. I showed you last time I recorded, I was working on some like sample row lags that I had been sent by a lovely viewer. I finished those off and I forgot to grab them, but they're just a couple of sample ones. They're in my handspun cupboard now, so I'm going to leave those there. But I am currently working on some more fibre. So this was part of a gradient bats set by Hilltop Fibres. So this is the Dark Reflections gradient bat set, and this was a gift, a Christmas gift. I can't remember if this was from my parents or from Perry's parents, because I got one from my parents and one from his parents. I can't remember who gave which one, but this one was from one of them. So these are the other 5 colours. So there's 10 of these little mini bats. I've already spun 5 onto this bobbin. I'm going to spin the next 5 onto another bobbin, and then I'm just going to chain ply them back on themselves to maintain the colour gradient. It's so soft. It's the blend is merino and tussar silk. So this is the next colour. So you can just see that I've never seen fibre prep like this before, like this little like mini bat. And what I actually did, the first few bats, I sort of just untwisted it. I found the edge and unrolled it and then split it up into 3 or 4 strips and spun it how I've spun my bats before. But what I did with the last couple was I just sort of pulled the fibre off the end and just spun it almost like a row lag, and it actually worked out pretty well. So, and it went, I felt like it went faster that way than the way I was doing it before, and I felt like I was getting a much more consistent spin as well, which was interesting. I wasn't expecting it to be as nice as it was. I thought it might end up getting really messy, but it's actually worked out quite nicely. So what I'm thinking of, and the reason why I haven't spun the rest yet, is because I stopped towards the end of last week, I guess. Well, actually over the weekend I finished spinning this bobbin, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop, and I think I'm going to do like a little spinning vlog for the rest of this, and then showing the plying and how it's turned out at the end, because I think it was quite interesting, and it was a different way of spinning from what is essentially been prepped as a bat, although it's been quite densely packed in here. Like when you hold it, it feels quite solid. And each one of these little bat things are about 15 grams. So there's 150 grams total. There were 10, and so each of these are 15 grams. I'm excited to see how this turns out. Ooh. And yeah, hopefully there'll be enough there for a good size shawl or some other sort of project, and we'll see what that turns into. On the topic of spinning, and this isn't something I've done recently, but I posted recently on Instagram about this, and I thought I'd share on the podcast as well. So before I got my wheel, I've had 2 previous experiences spinning. The first time was when I attended the very first Curious Handmade Country House Retreat, back, I think it was like March 2016. And one of the attendees there was kind enough to teach me how to spin using a drop spindle that she'd brought. And this was the very first bit of handspun I've ever produced. And this was made on a drop spindle. And that's when I knew I would not be a spinner with a drop spindle. I would not be a drop spindle spinner. It just wasn't intuitive. I think this was some sort of BFL, if I'm not mistaken. it just didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel right, and I just knew in my heart that I wasn't going to be interested in doing that. So that summer, later that year, or was it that summer? No, I think it was the following. No, it was that summer of 2016, because I was early days pregnant at the time. I went to the Fibre Festival, and there was a booth there selling these hand spinners, which was really interesting. And so I purchased one. And the guy who was running the booth, I can't remember his name now, he Hans, that was it, Hans. He's Dutch, from the Netherlands. Yeah, I always get confused between Dutch and Danish, and I always have to think about it, and I know which one's which, but I have to think about it to make sure I don't say the wrong one. It's just one of those things that I've always like had to second guess myself on. So this company's Lowlands Legacy. It's a Bogway hand spinner, and yeah, so it's like just this little thing, and that's how you spin it. So you put in the spin and you spin it either way, and you just wrap the yarn onto it, and there's a little picture there. And back when I got this, I did show on the podcast once or twice, I think, how I spun with it. And it came with some sample fibres, which I don't know what was in it, but some sample mystery fibre that I spun up into a 2-ply. So I spun up whatever I could onto here, and then I did like an Andean plying bracelet and plied it back onto here. And then also at the festival I picked up some fibre, because of course you should. So I picked up only 2 of these little fibres from a company who I don't know actually the name of the company. It's not on the, oh here we go, Willow Fibres, Tim and Denise Willow Fibres, WILLO, and they have a website, willowfibres.co.uk. So I'll pop that, if I remember, I'll pop that link as well in the show notes and below the video. I forgot to say, show notes are below the video on YouTube in the description box. So I picked up some grey Corriedale top and some Icelandic humbug top, and it's humbug I think because of the way the colours are. So there's 100 grams of each. I think it was only like £2 or £3 for each one, so really affordable. And I actually spun half of the Corriedale. So this is my very first, I think, usable quantity. I say usable in quotes because this is technically usable, but I think this is like my first officially usable quantity of handspun. It's a 2-ply, 51 grams, 100% Corriedale, about 120 meters. So I'd say it's probably more like somewhere between like a worsted and a bulky. Some parts are more bulky than others. Handspun. And so again, I spun this on the hand spinner, and then I wound off onto toilet roll, the toilet roll tubes, and I used some old straight knitting needles and jerry rigged a lazy cape using a shoebox and some old knitting needles, and plied off of that to get this, which I was quite excited about. So I never did anything with it at the time, and I think I meant to make a hat with it, and I wanted to use a softer yarn for the inner part of the brim, and then this on the outside, so this wouldn't, because it's not quite next to skin soft, it's a little bit scratchy to be next to skin. But yeah, I'm really excited about it, and now I have my fibre back, because this was all part of the stuff that ended up in storage in New York. So I'm looking forward to spinning these up as well. I think I might spin up the rest of this Corriedale just to see how much of a difference there is in my spinning between using this hand spinner a couple of years ago and since I got my spinning wheel recently. So I might actually do this first before I do the bat, the rest of that gradient bat, just because I'm really interested to see how this works out. Yeah, so that's it for spinning content. So moving on, I need to check my notes. Acquisitions, nothing new to add other than what I showed you guys in the VKL haul. I haven't received anything else since then. Knit-alongs and giveaways. So I've actually already recorded a prize winners video for the Triple Dutch Cardigan knit-along and the 2018 sock clubs, so the Wanderlust and the Cozy sock clubs. I did the December drawing for the Cozy sock club because I hadn't done that yet, and then I also did an overall draw from the finished objects thread for the Wanderlust and the Cozy. So there's 2 winners for each of those as well. So there's quite a lot of winners announced in that video, so if you took part in either of those cals, make sure you check that out. Actually, if you took part in the Triple Dutch Cardigan knit along and you entered a finished object, you won a prize. I gave a prize to everyone who entered because there were only 3 individuals who entered. So make sure you check it out and see what you won, and give me your address. And then last week, or last time I recorded, it wasn't last week, it was a few weeks ago, definitely not last week, I decided to have a Just Because giveaway. And so if I just show you really quickly what the prizes were. So one prize was this project bag from Layla Did It, these 2 skeins of MCN sock yarn, this skein of Sierra yarns in the Chilan base in the gum colourway, it's bulky, and 2 skeins from Sierra yarns in their worsted weight in this burgundy colourway, this like really fuzzy yarn. It's mainly alpaca, this one. So the winner for this was I did it through the YouTube comments, and I found a website where it would just randomly select a YouTube comment, and it was comment number 194. There were 355 comments in total. So the winner was number 194, and that was Danielle Boots. So congratulations, Danielle Boots. If you can get in touch with me with your address, I can get this out to you ASAP. And I decided, because there were so many lovely comments and I really enjoyed reading everyone's, I decided to do another prize, draw another winner from that, from the comment section. And I decided to give away the 3 skeins of Blue Sky Fibres that I received in the goodie bag when I went to Folk Knitting Live for one of the teacher events I attended. So there's a skein here of Spud and Chloe Fine, which is their sock yarn. There's a skein of their organic cotton, and a skein of their eco cashmere, which is 50% recycled cashmere and 50% virgin cashmere. So some really lovely fibres to play around with there. And the winner for this one was number 70, comment number 70, and that was Nadine Pierce. So congratulations, Nadine. If you can get in touch with me, that'd be great. So I'm doing these prize drawings specifically in the podcast because it's for the podcast, whereas the others were for knit-alongs. And I didn't want to do them in that one. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and then I'll be back with a bit of a week in review. And yeah, so what's been going on the last few weeks? Well, I signed up to FibreShare for the first time in a couple of years. I signed up for FibreShare quite early on, like one of the first years they did it, back when they didn't charge to sign up. Now they charge a small fee, which I think is perfectly fine and acceptable because it takes a lot of time for them to sit there and do the matching and organising it. Yeah, like it's a lot of work, so they deserve to get some money for what they're doing. I believe it's only 1 or 2 people that runs FibreShare, so it's a lot of work for just a couple of people. So I decided to take part as a spinner this time. The last time I did it as like I did it as a knitter, so I did like the knitter swap. But I have so much yarn, I really don't need more yarn. I actually have a lot of fibre now as well, but I thought that would be more interesting and be a different experience. And in the past, the reasons why I haven't signed up previously again, like for other boxes, or to sign up as a FibreShare swap before, or between the last time and this time, mainly it's been because every time it's come up, it's not been a good time for me. Either we just had a baby, or we were moving, or we didn't know where we were going to be at the time when we had to like mail out the packages, or we were on a trip. There was always a reason why I couldn't do it. And this time it popped up, the email in my inbox, and I was like, you know what? I can totally do it this time. No big deal, let's do it. So I'm really excited to take part in that. Obviously Vogue Knitting Live happened, that went really well. If you've wanted to check out the vlog, that's up now and you can check that out. And if you haven't, well, it was amazing. I had an amazing time. I was so nervous about teaching, and now I feel really silly about it because it was actually totally fine and it went really well. I feel like it went really well. I haven't received the formal feedback yet from them about what the students have said, but from what I've heard and from what people have told me to my face, it went well. So I hope that everyone was happy with the results of the classes. And yeah, so if you want to see what I got at Vogue Knitting Live, you can check out the vlog. The first hour is the vlog, and the last half an hour is basically the haul section. There's another little haul bit during the vlog where I talked about some of the stuff that I got before I went to Vogue Knitting Live. But yeah, so if you're just interested in the yarn and stuff I got at the event, you can just watch the last half hour. Oh, it was so funny getting back. Well, first of all, it was amazing to see Layla after I got back. This is the longest that we'd been away without her, where both of us had been away as well, so it was quite a while. But she was so excited to see me when I got back, and it was so cute and it was adorable. It was lovely to get all the cuddles in the morning when she woke up. And then so the day after I got back, again, this is something I've mentioned but I don't talk about a whole lot because I don't want to bore you guys about it, because this is a knitting podcast and spinning podcast and not a weight loss podcast. But I do Slimming World, and I have talked about this before. I am working on getting back to a healthier place, and I do Slimming World, and so we have a weekly, I weigh in weekly, and I'd weighed in just before going to Vogue, and I lost a lot of weight, and it's the most I've ever lost in a week. And I think the majority of that was stress related, because I was so stressed in that last week before leaving for Vogue. So much anxiety, so much stress. I was so, I didn't really change what I'd eaten that week. I don't think I'd eaten any less or any more or any differently. I was still eating the same way I was eating before, but I just think the level of stress I was under was what caused me to lose weight. And then once I got back, because when I was in New York this time in particular, I had very little control over what food I could eat. I didn't have as much time to go looking for like quote unquote good food or healthier food options. You know, I didn't have, a lot of the time it was just grab what you can and go sort of thing. And so I quickly realized I wasn't going to be able to stay on plan, as it were, or as much as I would have liked. So I decided, you know what, it's just a few days, it doesn't matter as much. Like, you know, I'm making the decision to just enjoy myself. I'm going to enjoy what I can have and what I can get my hands on, and I will make choices of things, you know, I'll do as good as I can, but when I don't have a good option, I will pick something that I will enjoy. And at least if I'm going to gain the weight, it will be for a good reason. It'll be for something that I've enjoyed eating and not just for some random rubbish. So I came back and I actually gained more than I lost before I left, which was kind of hilarious, which I found absolutely hilarious. I was expecting a gain, that was not an issue, but I went back yesterday for a weigh-in and I've lost over half of what I gained in New York, so it's fine, it's coming off, it's all good, working on it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. That's kind of like my philosophy with weight loss. It's not about losing the weight fast, it's about being healthy and about changing your habits. And that's really what Slimming World teaches you. It's not like a fast diet plan where you just like lose weight really quickly and then struggle to keep it off. It's promoting a lifestyle change to healthier eating habits, which is really good and it's really important. And I found that it's made a huge difference in the way I think about food as well, which is good. I've not always had the healthiest relationship with food, so I'm very much an emotional eater. I've noticed as well, earlier this year I had a period where I had, just after New Year's, where my back was really bad. It was really acting up, and I noticed, it was the first time that had happened since I started Slimming World, and I noticed I have such low willpower when I'm in pain. When I'm in pain, like I couldn't care less what I was eating. I just wanted food and I wanted all the bad things. but yeah, so it was interesting to figure out, like, this, doing all of this is actually helping me to understand, you know, my relationship with food as well, which is interesting. Right, so Perry got back after all that. Adjusting to being back home was a bit of a, it took a few days with jet lag and everything. By the time I was leaving, I'd only just about adjusted to New York time, and then I was coming back here and had to readjust back to London time. Thankfully it wasn't too bad, and having to get up early in the morning to get Layla up and ready for nursery just meant that I had to get up. And I didn't have a choice, and I pushed through. I tried not to have naps during the day, I tried not to have coffee late in the day, and it helped readjust me back to my normal time. And then Perry got back on Friday last week, so that was really fun. It was so lovely. He got home, Layla was having a nap, so he got to see her once she woke up, and she was excited. She was so excited to see him. She was lost for words. Like, she literally couldn't say a word. She was so excited. It took a solid 10 minutes before she actually started talking. It was all just like, huh, huh, and laughing and giggles and stuff. It was really quite cute. She was like pointing and like making random sounds. And then on Saturday he took Layla down to his parents for the day, which was nice. It gave me a little bit of time to just do what I needed to do and stuff and rest. And he got to spend some quality time with her. We had some snow last week, so she got to play with snow in her grandparents' back garden with Molly, the little dog, and there were some really cute videos from that. And then what did we do? Oh, Sunday was a fun day actually. Perry wanted to take Layla out for pancakes on Sunday morning, so we all went to, there's a little pancake house that's opened up in town, so we went there for pancakes in the morning. I didn't have anything, I just had coffee, and Perry and Layla enjoyed their banana and Nutella crepes. Layla loved it. She had her very first milkshake. She had a strawberry milkshake, which she devoured most of actually. And then we wandered around for a little bit for her to burn off some energy. I've never seen her on a sugar high like that before. Honestly, she was so full of beans, she didn't even know what to do with herself at one point. She was just like, ah! But it was fine. We took her to the little soft play in the shopping centre and she got it all out of her system. Like, it's not something we do very often. It was very much a special treat. And I was like, she's just had her sugar quota for the next week. We're good. My brother decided to come over Sunday afternoon. He was doing something nearby anyway during the day on Sunday, and he came over in the afternoon, ended up spending the night with us, which was nice, and he was here for most of the Monday as well, which was lovely. It was nice for him and Layla to have some like proper bonding time, and just before he showed up she actually learnt how to say his name properly, which was really cute. I've got a video of that on my family Instagram as well if you wanted to check that out. It is a private account, but if I can tell that you're a knitter or someone I know, then I will accept the request to join. And then on Monday, early afternoon, around midday actually, my friend Carly came over with her little boy. Carly actually just started a podcast recently. I think she started with Vlogmas and now she's doing her podcast, and it's called My Creative Daydream. If you wanted to check that out, she's very lovely, she's very sweet. We met actually for the first time at Unravel last year. She'd won a prize on the podcast, so we met up at Unravel so I could give her prize, and she gave me a couple of presents for Layla, which was very kind of her. And I can't actually go to Unravel this year because it's Layla's birthday that same weekend, so I'm not going to Unravel this time. But yeah, so she came over and her little boy is almost 2 years older than Layla, so it was really cute seeing them play together, and they had a lot of fun. At first Layla was just like, she does this thing when strangers come into the house, especially if she's like in her high chair or somewhere where she can't get away easily, she just like turns her head and like pretends they're not there, and she's like, if I just pretend you're not there then you can't see me. It's really quite funny. But once they'd finished eating and they started playing with like the kitchen and some of the toys and stuff, they got on really well, which was really cute to see. So that was nice. They had a little play date, and that's basically it. Yesterday was a work day for me, just spent a lot of time catching up with stuff and working out some design stuff so I can get them cast on and things. So yeah, it's been a good day. It's been a good week so far. I've got some editing of this video to do today and a few more other things. It's always something to do. There's never enough time in the day and always too much to do. I still need to plan Layla's birthday party, which is going to be happening sooner than I can imagine. I also need to make sure we've invited everyone, so we'll see. Right, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. That was all I had on my notes. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting to talk about. I'll probably end up remembering after I finished editing and exporting the video, but oh well. Thank you for joining me again this week. If you stuck through to the end, I appreciate you sticking with it, and I will see you again soon. All right, take care. Bye.